So what we're going to do is we're going to be going over the meta markets. We're going to be covering Spies, Qs, Bitcoin real quick. Then we're going to be jumping into the Benzinga movers for the day, see what potential stocks are moving that can offer potential day trades. And we're also going to be looking for not just long trades, we're going to be looking for short trades as well. So let me make sure that's clear. Okay, so I'll keep that up for right now. But that's what's going to be happening, and then we'll do live callouts, which is basically if you want to look at any instrument, that will be once we go to live callouts after we've gone through the first set of things. Just need three things: instrument, time frame, 1 cent subscription, bullish or bearish. That's it. So if you want to call out on any instrument, you want me to analyze something, do a call out, no problem. Just follow the three things. That's it. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump on in. So Spies and Qs are showing some volatility now for the first time in a while. They'd had 15 or 14 to 15 days bullish on the Spies. And now we're kind of coming into some pullback and volatility. And the key thing that I'm noticing here is, well, there's two things I'm noticing. One, I'm seeing a lot more people buy puts or buying protection, downside protection on Spies and Qs. We've seen an increase in that over the last 2 sessions. So that's the first thing that I've noticed. That will put some downside pressure on the markets. The second thing is that both Spies and Qs have now flipped to negative gamma. So as I've talked about with my option bootcamp members, when the market's in a positive gamma environment, that means they're long options. Volatility tends to be compressed. When the market's in negative gamma, that means the market is more net short options, then volatility tends to increase. We're in that environment right now. We've been seeing that increase over the last couple sessions, and we're seeing a lot of put exposure in both markets. So in both Spies and Qs. And we've even seen an increase in volatility in Bitcoin. So it's carrying over into other markets. And I feel like there's still some room to run in this environment for more volatility. So we do have Vix Expiration today. That's this morning, if I'm correct. And so that's going to create some repositioning in VIX, which has gone up in the last few days. So if VIX continues to get a tailwind, then that's going to put pressure on SPY and Qs as well. So that's kind of what we're seeing on that. All right, AT. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at Constantine saying sounds good. Okay, sweet. So let's look at Spies. Again, increase in volatility on this. Right now, 410 is kind of an important line in the sand. We had this strong bounce, very strong buying off of it, and then strong in the latter half of the session to hold. So there clearly is some institutional interest coming in around 410.50, 410.60, because it always pushes it, a good 2.5, 3 points. But the bottom line is we still are at a corrective structure at the bottom of this most recent move. I'm going to bust out my pen. Where is my pen? There we are. So we have impulsive, corrective here. And so if this breaks to the downside and breaks the 410 strike, then I think we got some more unwinding in Spies. I think we could see a little bit more unwinding. Let's look at the 4-hour for that. That's pretty big. We haven't seen a counter trend impulsive sell-off like this in this most recent rip, from the 25th of March. So you're talking almost a month. Only until the last few days have we seen a counter trend impulsive pullback. They've all been corrective pullbacks. Impulsive, corrective, impulsive, very tight corrective, impulsive, corrective. You can see it here, but now counter trend impulsive pullback, and the bounce is a little weak. So I think we're going to retest this, and I think if we get maybe a 1 or a 4-hour close below that, then I think we're going to see further unwinding in Spies. So you could see 408, and a deeper base around 400. Yeah, that could open up a room to 400. If we get the 1 hour, 4-hour close below that, that could open up room to around 400. That would put a lot more downside pressure on the market. So another 10-point drop in SPYs would put a lot more downside pressure. Qs, looking at that, Qs is also rolling over. We took a bearish position on Qs yesterday. So I'll start with the 5 and then I'll go the weekly real quick. So Qs is already kind of operating within this box of support. Actually, I might need to step out. There we go. Okay, so let's step out to the 1 real quick. So Qs has been stuck in this box of support or resistance here, this corrective structure at the top of a most recent up leg, which was also right around the same resistance. So it's just floating with new all-time highs, but it was kind of dancing both sides of the line. So both sides of the line, in this case, the line being 338. So it forms this corrective structure between 341 and 336, 6-point range. But then it spills lower out of it, and it comes back into this as resistance. And so when it did that on the 5-minute, we sold it. So we took these little pullbacks right here, and we shorted it. I think we shorted on this candle. And we have one big overshoot, and then came right back down, and now we're pressing lower. So we're bearish on this right now. If it loses 334, where would I think things will go then? Have the potential for 330. That would be interesting. Let me take a look and see what's going on in the open interest areas. Yeah, I think we have room to go. If we break the ITD lows, intraday lows, then I think we have room for 330. So that's kind of what I'm thinking on Qs right now. After that, I think we run into some support. It's going to be tested or contested to some degree. Let's go to 4 hours, see if we can show that. Yeah, so here's the 330. You can see there's kind of a base here, which provided the next liftoff. This is a corrective structure at the top of an impulsive move. And so just a short-term base, holding VWAP, lifting out, even coming back one time to the top of this range here, and then finding more liquidity and going higher. But now it's failing. It's rolling over. Even on a 1 hour, this looks pretty bearish. Or on a 4 hour, this looks pretty bearish. So I'm leaning more towards a rollover in Qs. Again, if we see a rollover in Qs, that could increase volatility as a whole. We're talking about sell-offs right now have the potential to increase volatility. We haven't had a whole lot of volatility in the last 2 weeks, and now we're experiencing this increase in volatility right now. And I think that's going to continue through today based on how the dealers and the market makers are positioned right now. All right, so, and the market as a whole. All right, so we've covered Qs. Let's cover Bitcoin. Bitcoin showing some weakness. I kind of mentioned this to my private members yesterday. You know, it was all going so well for us bulls. This was a nice breakout structure here. You know, this is a very nice structure here. But then we got above it and we shot all the way down from 65 to 50 and then closed back towards the middle. So anytime you have a candle that is at the top of an up move, you make a new false high in that candle, you pull back down, then you kind of close towards the middle. If that candle is wide enough, that's suggesting a lot of two-way price action. Because it was already bullish leading into it, we know there was a lot of imbalance on the long side. The market kept pushing higher in the price action. Therefore, the order flow was dominated to the buy side. But then we had that false break and rip back down. That suggests there's also a big hand up there whacking this thing back down. There's a fair amount of institutional order flow saying, hey, this is overvalued at this point. So I'm sure there's some trapped longs that bought on the breakout and they're under pressure. And the more this continues to press to the downside, the more those trapped longs are going to be feeling the pressure to close. And if they close, that will just fuel the downside a little bit. So right now, Bitcoin looks short-term vulnerable. This candle is not inspiring so far. If we continue to press down, then it's going to really be testing the bulls down here at 49.50. And if we get a weak bounce off of here, so it doesn't make it as high as this weekly high, let's say it only makes it to like here, then that would show less strength on the buy side. The group that's buying on dips, that would show a lot less strength. And so with that kind of situation, that would suggest it would start leaning towards potential pullback, deeper pullback than this structure we're in right now. So short term showing some weakness. It's going to need to stabilize a bit, and I don't see it yet. I don't see it yet. If at least on the higher time frame. On the lower time frame, I'm not seeing it as well. Yeah, I'm not even seeing stabilization on the 4 hour or the 1 hour. I'm still seeing short term weakness. So you can see here. Here's your breakdown structure. Big sell off, holding corrective structure, mostly at the bottom. You know, there's some really strong dip buying here at 50, which is not surprising being a big round number. And it's holding a little bit above it, but it's still bearish. It needs to clear this right here, which is around 58. before, in my opinion, that it will start to put more upside pressure and try and recapture those all-time highs. So short term, I'm sensing weakness in Bitcoin, seeing it across the board in a lot of instruments right now. Okay, so one more I want to check in super quick. UAL, we shorted this yesterday. Very similar play to Qs. So they had an earnings announcement, and they were expecting, a gangster number, and they didn't quite get it. And on top of it, their guidance for Q2 is kind of like, hey, we expect revenue to be down still. This is how much. And it was kind of a sour note, so to say. So what did we see when the earnings came out? We saw a massive sell-off, 54 down to 50. Actually, sub 50. So we had a couple bounces here below it, which you can see right here. And we felt this bounce was corrective. So we sold, it was either this one or no, we sold this one here because it was early enough in the session. So after a brief pop, we've come back down to support. We found some dip buyers, but right now it's in this corrective structure at the bottom of the most recent move. That to me is leaning more towards bearish. So with the structure and with the flows and everything and the bad news, I am leaning towards a bearish move on this. So if it spills to the downside here, then what are we looking at in terms of potential targets? Let's go to, I think we can go to a 4-hour on this, probably. Let's expand this. Okay. So I think your next area of strong support, in my opinion, is right around here. So you got this and this. Let me mark it with the pen so you kind of see. There, there, and there. And this is, this is a corrective pullback that found an extreme amount of buying. Just huge, quick reaction, pulsive corrective, new highs in this whole structure. Now we're seeing it roll over a bit. Then flat, and then lower lows and very weak bounce. So we'd like to see it move down to 47, maybe even a little bit lower. That's kind of what we're looking at on UAL. I think we need to get to 46 for us to hit our target on this one here. But I still think there's some potential for this one here. I think any weak bounces to the weekly VWAP are selling opportunities, in my opinion. That's kind of how I'm playing this. All right, so we got that. This is just a short-term weakness play. Things will stabilize, I think, eventually. But for short-term, for the next few weeks, I'm expecting weakness in UAL and travel as a whole. Okay, so let's move on to Benzingers, and then we'll Benzinger movers, and then we'll do open Q&A. Okay, so on the we're gainers pre-market, good. So we got a few. We only got a couple really that are 600,000 shares and above. FSR Fisker. It's had a decent run this week. I am considering it, but I feel like we're still going to run in resistance just up ahead. So we will take a look at FSR real quick. FSR. Okay, and what else? WPT. This is an acquisition, though. So would acquire the company for $4.3 billion. It doesn't exactly specify the share price, but you're probably between $18 and $20 a share. So it's an acquisition. There's not really much you can do. OCGN. 12 million already and 56.3 million. So it's what, 1/5? It's at 20% of its average 30-day volume. It's got a lot of volume in it right now. It's up 21%. Let's take a look at OCGN. OCGN. Okay, that looks decent. That looks decent. Let me see what's just going on in the open interest world. There are no options on OCGN. That is interesting. Okay. All right, let's mark the pre-market highs. It's a very strong structure short term. And we're seeing some, 678. So let me see where that is on the weekly. It's right here. It's above the monthly VWAP. And then there's 632 and 475 and 354. Okay. So here we are on the weekly, but right now the pre-market highs is right around here. It's actually a little bit lower. Right around here. It's right at the monthly VWAP. It's not strong enough yet for me to feel like it's cleared out some of the bearish order flow at like 680, but there is something there. Let's take a look at this on the 4 hour. Okay, so we do got some disruption in this most recent move. So let's take this kind of channel. You don't have to be perfect. It just has to be a rough approximation to kind of indicate that the selling pressure is consistent. There's still dip buyers in the market. That's why you get lifts off the bottom of the channel. But most of this is selling pressure. Okay, so we start to get some support right around here. And we get a decent lift, but then it's like really one candle. It's 4 hours of buying, then a lot of selling, and then new lows. And then we stabilize again. And now, assuming this candle closes bullish, we're looking at potentially 2 4-hour candle closes, which some of these prior rips are just one candle, one candle. We did get a 3 candle here, and we got 1 here. But we're looking at a little bit more buying. And this prior low, which was held here, see a boom, boom, bounces, breaks it, then it tests it. Now it's considering it a ceiling, sells off. Now we've recaptured some of that mojo. So some of that selling mojo has been recaptured. And that to me is the first sign of a transition happening in this stock right now. It's probably going to need to clear whatever that is. Let's see what price that is. Like it's going to need to clear 74575. And even then, there's still some resistance here at 857. So it's first, 7.5. And it's still got to clear some meat around 8. Then it has room to lift. Then it could, then we're talking 10 and maybe 12 and, potentially recapturing this prior spike highs. So it's not there yet, but it's almost there. It's definitely showing more and more signs of disruption in this, but it needs to complete a little more. It's got a little more homework to do, in my opinion. So get to work, Akujin. All right, so those are the 3 movers on the day. Actually, since we have a lot of bearish pressure in the markets, let's check in with the losers. Let's see if we can find any shorting opportunities here. Okay, so only a few that are heavy pre-market. That's not bad. Yeah, I think this could be under pressure, but I'm not a fan of trading that. SOS, I don't want anything to do with that. Futu, trailing left. The company priced its 9.5 million ADS offering 130. Okay. Okay. So it is an ADS offering, so questionable. All right, let's take a look at USO. That one's a little bit more stable. So, okay. All right. Yeah, let's take a look at this one. USO. Look for some potential downside plays. Okay, so on the weekly, this whole bounce is corrective. It's steady, it's consistent, but it's relatively corrective. I mean, think about this. This thing has bounced from the lows 1780 to 45, which is pretty impressive. That's 34. It's roughly 150, 180%. But this 3 weeks of selling, it still hasn't recaptured the last 3 weeks of selling. And so that is going to act as resistance, which it has before. So I think as we get there, if we get back to 44.79, I'll probably look to sell that. But let's look at this on some smaller time frames and see if we can flesh out of this. Okay, so we have make new highs. You have impulsive, corrective, make new highs, falls back. There's definitely a bid. It's right around 40. So that's not surprising to see a bid come in at a round number like that. There's just, there's probably some large institution flows that have to have exposure 40s going for them. So we have this high here. We make the same lows. Then we make a lower high than this high. So if this makes it back down to 40, then it's created this kind of higher high, lower high structure. And that would lean towards, if we get a weaker bounce from 40, then the next leg trying to push below 40. So that is showing some weakness there. Now, is there a potential play near term? Probably on a bounce. That's the wrong sound. Yeah, potentially on a bounce. I like 42.75 all the way up to 43 is even 43.35. I think this is all good meat between 42.75 and 43.35, 45. That is all really good selling area in my opinion. I really like that. So I'm going to set some alerts a little bit ahead of that, 42.35 to give me a warning. Let's take a look at this on 1 hour though. See if we can drill down and maybe find anything else. No, not there yet. Okay, so we did have, yeah, impulsive corrective at the top of this most recent move. And then counter and impulsive selling, corrective buying into the 42.75. 42.75 is no longer a floor, it's a ceiling because we're going to slam down. So 42.75 is, I think, a pretty solid pullback area. That's what I'm going to look to get short on this one. THR channel saying I can only hear audio from my left. Yeah, we're still working with this new streaming software. For some reason we can only get mono. We can't get stereo. Apologize for that. We are not the tech gods. we're working on it. We're working on it. We need like one of those like construction signs or something like that when it comes to the to the stream. This stream is under construction. So okay, so that's where we are right now. Yeah, I'm bearish on USO. So you could short underlying or you can short volume options. That's what I think would be the two plays. Okay, so with that being said, we are now in open Q&A session. If you have instruments you want to look at, I need the instrument, time frame, 1 sentence description below for bearish. So it's call out time. We got 4 minutes to the market open. I'll probably go a few minutes after that. But that's where we are right now. So call outs. Jeremy Doucette. Do you use any opportunity for range play, or do you see any opportunity for range play on CSIQ? Let's take a look. Canadian Solar, if I'm correct. Yeah. On the 4 hour. Oh, sorry, I'm on the 1 hour. That is weekly. That is 4 hour. Okay, so you have a larger range here, but there is showing some weakness here. So impulsive, corrective into prior resistance, impulsive. We have all this larger channel floating up, and now it's showing some weakness outside of that channel and this kind of tight corrective structure at the low of this most recent move. So when I put all that together, it's leaning more weakness. But let's see if CSIQ. Okay, so about a third when you look at the open interest. It's not huge, 50,000, roughly 50,000 calls to 30,000 puts. So it's got roughly a third of the open interest rolling off this Friday. So it's a fair amount of weekly options. I think pullbacks to 45 are probably going to act as resistance leading into this week. And if it doesn't, then I'm definitely a seller at 49.50. So I'm leaning more towards the bearish if we get a little bit more of a pullback. However, if we get down here correctively, we've only really had one real test. I guess you can say this second pullback here if I zoom in. Let's extend this out. Get rid of that. So I guess you could say this is a double test here. Boom. Bounces. Boom. So there is something to that. However, I would like to see one more test. If we were to get down here again, you see strong buying, then I think you have a couple options. You could play the long side, long calls, bull call spread. You could buy the underlying, tight stops below it. Yeah, you have maybe $1.50 stop on that one, and you have a fair amount of upside. You know, on the $4.50 roughly, or $4 on your first target. And if you can drift higher, you know, get past this right here and make it in the upper range in 48 minutes, there's potential for an upside play here. But with the short-term signs, this is leaning more towards if I had to speculate on the next direction, I would think the next direction is more likely down to the lower end of this range around 38. So right around here. I think that's more likely than this breaking this prior highs here. So I'm leaning towards that. If, however, we start to show some strength and we start to get to the middle of the range, then there might be a neutral strategy range play, like a neutral option play, iron butterflies, iron condors, that kind of thing. Maybe even, I don't know, but IV is increasing. So yeah, I don't know about selling straddles. That could be risky in an environment like this. Okay, so that's my thoughts on that one there. It's a good question. Jake Oy, and that's the bell. Jake Oy gets the bell question. So, he wants to look at Vale for around 1880. Okay, let's take a look, step back. I think we had this level. Yeah, we did. Okay, so we have this level before. Let's see what's rolling on in the open interest world. Nothing gangster. 800,000 calls to 600,000 puts. Not a whole lot of options rolling off. Wow, not for a while, actually. A lot of the option open interest is further out of the, like not expiring in May, but more like June, July. And it's a tight range. The top open interest call is 20. The top open interest is 15. Yeah, tight range on this one here. My one concern with this is we really failed to break 20 on this breakout. You have a breakout and then the next candle is coming right back to it. That doesn't feel good. And the fact that we didn't clear out a round number at 20. If we had cleared out this, like it went for a couple weeks, then it would show over time, over several weeks, that it was able to maintain above these prices, but it's not. It's had like a brief visit above it and then right back down. It's reattacking it. That's not as inspiring to me. Also, we didn't clear 20. Not as inspiring to me. So short term, I am not exactly a fan of this one right now. I would like to see this settle a little bit more. Show some stability. Would I be a buyer at this bottom here at 1618? For sure. For sure. I would do that. Unless we have some like immensely like fast, rapid sell-off. It just like in two candles is like other than that, then I would be a buyer. But yeah, short term, I'm not a fan right now. I'd like to wait on this one. I'm not a fan on this. I'm leaning towards the downside. Even the intraday, yeah, that's impulsive selling to start to break through resistance here. Yeah, I'd sit on this one. I'm not seeing short term a lot of underlying conditions. It's a good question. Okay, sorry, getting a few notifications here. Jeffrey Banker says, do you take trades right at market open, or do you always wait some time to see what price is doing at the open? If there are trades at the market, I'll take it at the market open. It's not a question of oh, I want to buy this just because the market's open. I want to buy it because it's at a price that I like it. It's showing a structure that I like it. It is, giving me a lot of supported conditions and a good location that the market is there. So if that's right when the market opens, then I'll do that. Otherwise, no, it's when it gets there. Yeah, but I never trade just to be, hey, I want to be in as soon as the market opens. It needs to show me something, And if there's nothing there, then there's nothing to get in. So, and when it gets to that price, then I'm in. That's really how it works. David Alphaeus, I like the way you do this. Even when I do this, I get burnt when I enter. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to answer that question, David. But, if you're saying that, hey, you generally can spot some good setups and you don't take the trades though, and you don't make money on them. But then when you do decide to finally pull the trigger, you're finding that trades reverse on you. So yeah, I mean, it helps to, it's probably it could be a question of timing. It could be a question of location. It could be a question of direction. It could be any combo of those three. So, you're really talking about elements potentially of timing. You're talking about elements potentially of location, and you're talking elements of potentially around direction. There's no way to answer that, which one it is. That's where it helps to really look at the data, your stats, and your performance. Members, if they complete certain hurdles, we have like this test called the 108 set and forget that we tell them, hey, you do at least 100 trades using our methods with a trade plan that you have. Test it. That gives us a baseline. We'll analyze the data the first time. And that analysis is really helpful because it's not just, we're not just saying, hey, this is strong, this is weak, fix this, adjust this, augment this, but we're also finding holes in the game, and we're also teaching our students to find those things that I see in the data I've learned over 2 decades, that they can learn to spot those things as well. So we give our students the tools to be able to look at their own trading and determine, hey, is the problem direction? Or is it a question of timing? Or is it a question of my location? How do you know that? You figure that out through the data, through testing, through analysis. If you're not doing that, if you're not constantly analyzing your data, you are going to find that you experience the same mistakes over and over and over again. And sometimes, we're stubborn people. I can be somewhat stubborn. My girlfriend reminds me of this all the time. But, once you look at the data, you really don't have any other reason to not make the adjustment other than your own personal stubbornness. But the data sometimes helps. Sometimes we are very data-driven people who do trading. Sometimes when we look the numbers in the face, it's hard to not make adjustments. So once you become more and more seasoned as a trader, you look at making adjustments, at being wrong, and having to correct and readjust and recalibrate. You look at that as an occupational hazard, but it's a necessary one. And so and then eventually, you start to look at it and be like, oh, what can we find in the data today? It's like you start to appreciate finding areas that you need to improve upon. And then you start to look for those areas actively to where it becomes enjoyable. You don't look at your mistakes as some failing about you. You look at it as like, wow, that's an opportunity for me to get better. So look at the data, David. That's my recommendation. Okay, Mohammed Hashan. Hi, Chris. Hello to you. Euro USD 1 hour bearish. Also looks like a large CS on the 5 minute. Okay, let's take a look. We got a few more minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. So we'll do Jake, and then we'll do Phil, and then we'll wrap it up. All right. You're looking at on 1 hour bearish. Also looks like large CS. Okay, so let me just check in the weekly super quick. Okay, we've had 3 weeks of buying. There is some slowing down this week, but we've had 3 weeks of buying. Sadly, I can't see options data on Eurodollar. Okay, so this pullback is a little bit more. It's a little bit stronger than the others. Since this bounce, impulsive, corrective, impulsive, sideways, corrective, very tight at the top. Get a little bit of counter trend here, but it's steadily buying during this phase. Then we get some really good acceleration, impulsive and corrective, and then one candle rip out of it. So this selling right here is the strongest amount of selling I've seen in a while. It's also the most time, like VWAP, VWAP, VWAP breaks below it, and this looks short-term bearish. So we're at a pretty critical support level right around 119.90. Yeah, from 120 down to like 1980, you're going to have some support that you're going to have to chew through. But if we can see some 4 hour, 1 hour closes below that, then I think it's going to press 1955. And then it's going to look for a base around 119 maybe. If it ends up round tripping back to the bottom, I think that, in my opinion, that'd be a pretty solid buy. But short term, I'm leaning more towards bearish. Like there's more and more elements leaning bearish. Let's take a look at 1 hour and see if anything else. Yeah, short term, I'm leaning more bearish. We got to still clear out the decks between 120 and roughly 1980. So if it clears that, then you got more downside. Short term leaning more bearish. Yeah, not bad. Okay. COG. C-O-G. Cabot oil. A lot of oil, gas, energy lately. Okay, it's hard not to look at this as bearish short term. So let's see here. Looking to long at 1610. At IT. You clearly have a decent base of support going on there. Let's see what's happening in the open interest world. Not a lot of options rolling off for a couple months. So no short-term interest options. And it's not heavy volumes. Call volume around 50,000. Put volume around 30,000. So yeah, not heavy volumes. Top open interest, put 16. Top open interest, call 20. So tight range between 16 and 20. It's not a bad location. That's not a bad location. And you can have some pretty tight stops on this one, like roughly 40 cents. A little over 40 cents. And, you know, there's potential for, you know, minimum roughly $1.45 bounce. If you get off 16, maybe you can get all the way up to 18.75. I mean, there's some potential for, you know, some high plus R trades off this one here. Yeah, it's not bad. I like the location. I like it. Let's take a look at short term. It's bearish. Like the 1 hour and the 4 hour are bearish. There's just no way around that. So what you're going to probably want is, let's see, what's the low? 16.15. So somewhere between 16.15 and 1600, you're going to want to see the market stabilize. So what would that look like? Well, let's move the chart over, and that will draw you what stabilization will look like. So this is consistently selling down. Okay? That means more bearish pressure than bullish pressure. What would a transition in that mean? It would mean that we start moving sideways. So I'd want to see this kind of test and then start to move sideways. The wider the range, the better. If it's like really tight, then I would lean towards the downside. But if we start getting some width in this range, then 16 becomes a very good location to start buying. You know, and you can trade short term the top of whatever range that establishes. Or you can just the first time see if we can get the bounce up to, you know, 1740, 1750 kind of thing. But that's what I'd like to see. No longer downward pressure. I'd like to see this go sideways. If I start to see that, then I would be like, okay, I think we need to get long on this. So it's an interesting spot. I like your idea here. I need to see a little bit more on the dance floor here, but I think we're getting there. So that's how I'm rolling on this one. All right, we got a couple more in. Wow, Jake just like rapid fire. Rapid fire. Let me get in a few others, Jake, before I get that. NI. Knee source. I don't know if I've traded this one before. Weekly bullish. Yeah, kind of have to agree with you on that one there. Yeah, I think this is a good spot. I like this. We've just broken pretty big. Let me extend and get rid of that. So we've broken through a pretty big corrective structure, and we've done so. I mean, that's a very big corrective structure. Of this entire move, the sell-off 30-30 down to just under 20. So it's roughly a third. This corrective structure between 21 and 25 is 40% of that entire sell-off. That's a fair amount of counter-trend players on the bull side, meaning saying, hey, even though we're at the lows, we're pushing back pretty far. We're giving a good fight on this one here. And look at how we broke out of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Assuming this week closes up, you're talking 7 of the last 8 weeks are up. That's strength. So when I look at that, yeah, it's hard not to be a buyer on this on a pullback. I like this spot. This is a good spot. I'd trade this one. Yeah, I would trade this one. I don't see a whole lot of options rolling off. I don't even know if it has weekly options. It's, oh, wow, there's barely any options activity. Like 5,000 calls to roughly 1,500 puts. Yeah, that's like Very low options activity. So if you are going to trade options, you might not get the best spreads. That's a possibility. Just, keep that in mind. If you are going to take certain option plays like that, let the market be open for a half hour. The spread should tighten a little bit at that point. But I like this one. I like buying on pullbacks. Yeah, that's a good spot. That's a very good spot. Who did that one? Phil. Nicely done, Phil. Nicely done. Okay. Let's see if there's anybody else before we round out to Jake. THR channel has one. And shorting dollar yen since Monday, 19th, I have set take profit at 107.04. You think set too low? So do you have a time frame THR channel? That would really help. So remember, instrument, time frame, 1 sentence description, bullish or bearish. And you've been shorting since April 19th. Since yesterday. Okay. So yeah, let me know what kind of time frame you're basing this on. Like if this is a 5-minute chart, you're basing it on a 1-hour chart, you're basing it on a 4-hour chart. That will give me a relative frame of reference to examine this and then see like if it makes sense in terms of overall time horizon. Yeah. Okay, 4-hour. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Okay. We have some stabilization here, but lower high, lower high. I'm leaning towards this breaking to the downside. Yeah, I got two. The channel plus lower high, weaker bounce off of this. Yeah, I'm leaning towards this breaking the downside. If it breaks the downside, you got 107.88. And let's see, where would we run into? I don't see much of an issue around that target. Let me zoom out just a little bit, make sure we're not running into anything. So we got some meat at 107.60. You're looking for a 107. Yeah, I think if we can chew through 107.50, then I think hitting the low 107s it becomes a much more probable event. Short term, I'm leaning bearish. It's hard not to. This will be, if this week closes like this will be the 3rd week of selling in a row. 3 weeks of selling will have eclipsed 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks of buying. So yeah, I'm leaning towards the bear side in this one here. If you can get through 1750 or 107.50, then I think low 107s is very achievable. If the momentum still looks good after that, me personally, I would keep trailing it because there's definitely scope for a move down to around 105. There's scope for that. Doesn't mean it's going to get there. There's just scope for that. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm rolling on that one. Yeah, so agree with the direction, and I think there's some meat there for you, for sure. Okay, I'm going to get to live trading with the Trading Masterclass members. So that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this session. If you did, that little like button there, give it a little love tap. We appreciate it. We're still working out the kinks with this software, but I think we're going to keep rolling with it. I will probably do a session this Friday. We'll let you know. Wednesdays is our new session for, it's our new day for the pre-market live sessions. So Monday I'm doing something with Benzinga. Join us on that channel there for the Get Technical Hour. It's not an hour. It's several hours of Get Technical. I got a slot in there from 7 a.m. Pacific or 10 a.m. Eastern for about 30 minutes every day, every Monday. And we're just covering options. So if you want to learn more about options, if you already have some knowledge in options and you want to see how I'm trading options, what kind of trade setups I'm looking at, join us on the Benzinga Get Technical show at 7 a.m. Pacific for all talk on options. Wednesday we'll do pre-market live stream. That's any instrument, any time frame, doesn't matter. And then after that, I'll pepper in a few Fridays each month. So there's a decent chance we will do this Friday as well. But stay tuned for the community notifications and we'll let you know. Other than that, y'all have an awesome day today. Hit the bid, hit that like button, and I will see you next time in the green.